Okay, so hello to everyone. This is Cinzia and Miriam from the Photojournalism Hub. And with us, we have Ed and Wangui, Kimari. So we are just very glad to invite Ed and Wangui to talk about their collaborative project called As We Lose Our Fear. And it highlights very much the issue of police brutality, violence, and extrajudicial killings in Kenya. It highlights this very much in this compelling project. Ed is a photojournalist and documentary photographer. Currently based in Kenya, although I think he's moving very much in different places in the world to report on topics to do, stories around conflict and post-conflict, and which highlights very powerful and compelling it works very compelling, but highlights very strong, very important social justice issues. So I and Miriam work for the Photojournalism Hub, which is a platform or a community interest company which promotes photojournalism and highlights social justice issues. So the projects that we are discussing now with Ed and Wangui is very much in line with the work we do, and we hope to highlight, engage the audience. So thank you so much for both of you being here. Maybe just both of you, Ed and Wangui, if you could perhaps talk a little bit about how the project came about and what the project is about, a little bit about the background of the existing police killings and police brutality in Kenya. To know who wants to.
Sure. Do you want to talk maybe about the background, the MSJC in the background and what the project's about, I guess?
Sure, no problem. So thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Miriam. So I'm the participatory action research coordinator in a community group called Mathare Social Justice Centre. And it's a community-based organization in a poor urban settlement in Nairobi called Mathare, where lots of structural violence happens, whether it's the lack of water or the lack of toilets to hyper-policing and police violence. And so our foundational campaign, when we started, was in 2014, and we came about really as an effort of activists who felt that existing organizations were not attending to the grave phenomena of police killings. And we wanted to not only highlight killings, but also offer more community documentation of these killings, because often if you said so-and-so has been killed, someone in the middle class or the police will respond, that person was a thug or a thief. And at the same time, people didn't believe the numbers of people that were being killed. So we started documenting in 2014 people being killed in Mathare, but also nationally. And in 2017, through collective efforts and participatory work, we documented 803 people killed by the police in between 2013 and 2016. And so when we released this report, I think it's called, I can send it to you later, and perhaps you can give a hyperlink to it. But it showed that really police killings were really, it was like a pandemic. We're talking about a pandemic now. This is an ongoing pandemic in poor settlements. And so building on this work that we've been doing on documenting police killings, but also trying to create or contribute to a collective front of people and activists in poor urban settlements, we this kind of paved the way for our exhibition. I'll just send you a link to the report. So this kind of paved the way for our exhibition. We've been doing this work on police killings for individually, and collectively, at least collectively as part of Mathare Social Justice Centre for the last 7 years. We released our report in 2017, but since then we have other ways that we are trying, besides working together with other community justice centers. We also help convene a front of mothers, so the Mothers of Victims and Survivors Network, who are represented by the photos that we are exhibiting. And the reason we wanted a photo, we are really grateful that Ed came, who's our comrade friend who suggested the photo exhibition, is because it's a new way of working for us. It's a way also to intervene in spaces that would not necessarily read our report, because we took it to a gallery in a fancy place. You heard? Sorry, everyone.
You
No
were talking
worries.
about the exhibition, that it wasn't actually a nice place.
Yeah, thank you. So we, you know, for us, we try and often our work is through protests and collective research and organizing with other poor urban settlements. But this proposal was interesting to us to have a photo exhibit because it was in a gallery, and in poor areas, you don't have a gallery. And so we would be intervening in middle-class areas in Kenya where people aren't really talking about police killings. But so besides intervening and capturing an audience we don't usually have access to, what was also important with the pictures is that it established that these people who are dismissed as criminals or thieves have mothers who are dealing with the effects of their death, the gendered effects of their death. They were loved by someone, they had a history. And so the pictures helped us also establish this in a way that I think maybe was more in some ways approachable for an audience that didn't want to deal with the hard facts of police killings. This was kind of a soft way to intervene, but still a powerful way.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that point? In the mini documentary on your website, it says that someone raised the question of why the middle class is not in solidarity with the community. Why do you think that is? It's
because, and that's a great question, Miriam, because besides what we're also fighting, besides this wanton killings, is the stigma on poor people that if they're from Mathare, that means they're a criminal. And in a country where we have an unofficial but official shoot to kill policy that's been normalized, it's because it's been normalized, then saying that this person was not a criminal, even if he was or she was a criminal, they're jails, but establishing that they are human is part of what we need to do with the middle class. And that's why often it's dismissed, because these people are just dismissed as disposable or criminals. Even recently, a 14-year-old was killed, but that didn't rally middle-class people as much as the death of a middle-class person. Do you know what I mean? Because these bodies have been stigmatized as disposable. They're in a geography that's seen as degenerate. And so part of what we're fighting and why we're going to middle-class places with these pictures is to establish their humanity, that their value of their life.
Thank you.
One guy, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I remember asking that question to a Kenyan journalist at the end of last year when after I'd been working with MSJ for a bit, and was really confused about why the middle class are not so in solidarity with, there isn't so much solidarity. And he explained that there a lot of people who, middle class Kenyans who, not talking about upper class Kenyans who, have like what we would probably consider to be middle class in the UK, where you're kind of very financially stable, but sort of people who are sort of in the middle strata society in Kenya would probably not have that much financial security, and if you'd be one paycheck away, or one sort of salary away from then there's very little social security and no sort of welfare state, or very little welfare state in Kenya. And so by taking a stance and to stance against state activity, you then put yourself at risk. And so I don't know what you think about that, Wangui, but it's a risky position to put yourself into by having taking a stance.
For sure, and unfortunately, it's the people who have so much more to lose who take the stance. That's the unfortunate thing. Who lives are on the line all the time, who have to take the stance. And so part of my work as a boring middle-class researcher is to kind of rally my peers and be like, you have so much less to lose. So, but to capture them, you have to do things like beautiful things like exhibitions in ways that maybe introduce them to the topic in ways that are less raw sometimes. But the thing is, though, the pictures are so beautiful. But if you read the accompanying narrative, I think it's really, then I think the reality of those experiences sits quite difficultly with people. Like, it's really hard to sit in those narratives once you read them.
On that, I just want to say, I just caught one thing it was, I think, something other you said, or just someone commented about your work, that is not just documentation, but it's community documentation. And I think that is so powerful, because in a way, what is happening with the Social Justice Centre's work is very much documenting the community and in general. And I think that is quite powerful thing.
Yeah, and for us, that's the emphasis, because part of why we emphasize collective community work is to say that everyone's knowledge has value, especially you who experiences these violations. You know, it's very easy there's so much research done on poor people that it validates the knowledge of the researcher, but not the community. And what we want to do is to say, you are the expert, and you may not have years of research work, but sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, just
We have
just cut out a little bit there.
No problem. I mean, I'll just do something here. Okay, so really, it's why we do community research is because this is a population whose knowledge is not seen as valuable, and we're not, the way you collect information about this is not a conventional way. It's not like you go with a survey. This is your neighbor, so you have to go with particular ethics to sit and understand and write the name, but also the experience. And so it's more ethical, but it also, besides being more ethical, it validates that people who have been dismissed as not having any knowledge to bear, that they are valuable, that their knowledge is valuable, and that their experiences are valuable. And that's why we do that kind of research.
So would you say that as a consequence of your research and the exhibition and just the movement as a whole, do you think, or in what ways has there been an impact on the political level in the way that the community is regarded and taken seriously?
You know, Miriam, when we started in 2014, even having a community dialogue on police killings was seen as, it never happened, because there was this instilled fear, it was normalized. And so just by people saying we have to do this, that's created the space to have these conversations, but also once you have a report that's a living document, and that besides being experiential knowledge can be validated I'm saying science using air quotes, then you can't dismiss the extent of this phenomena, the extent of police killings. And so coupled with the protests, with the activist work and the research, then it's very hard to dismiss it. And so it's consistently created space for new groups to form, to denounce police killings. There's media openings, so there's been media openings. So every action creates more space, and that prompts political action recently. And I would say that the exhibition contributes to this, because also it was featured in VOA. There's news about it on various sites. Recently, the government said that police officers are not allowed to, and so because the police officers who are doing the killings usually come in plain clothes and in unmarked cars, the government said about a month ago that police are not allowed to walk around with no uniform and put people in unmarked cars. And that's such a big accomplishment. But this has happened principally because of the work of grassroots activists in Mombasa who are resisting war on terror, killings and disappearances, in Nairobi who are resisting the killing of poor people, in Kisumu who are resisting electoral violence. This has come from the collective work of activists consistently creating space. And this exhibition has been another way to create space, an opening to resist and denounce these killings, but also to prompt political action.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ed, just a question, or just on the actual work itself, the way you present it and the way you formalized it stylistically. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What kind of decisions you took to have that set of images shot in that way?
Yeah, so I guess I should start by explaining that I first members of Mathare Social Justice Centre in sort of mid-2020 on a couple of protests that I'd been sort of documenting for I think The Guardian and Vice. And then after that, and I was working with a text journalist at the time, and then after that, I got a couple of contact numbers and went to interview a couple of the different members, one of the activists, and was invited to come to an MSJC meeting, and I was very inspired by the kind of the drive and the energy in the room. Even after I think after every MSJC meeting, there's singing and there's some members are even wearing sort of almost communist style berets or like socialist style berets, and I was like, wow, this is a movement, and it touched something in me, and I was really, it was the first time I'd witnessed that in Kenya, and I was very inspired, and so I sort of wanted to be sort of further involved and see if I could contribute in any way. And so after becoming sort of friends and colleagues with a couple of the different members and doing some various different photography, I was then asked by another guy who was volunteering at MSJC who had been asked to help with the production of a booklet that was about, so yeah, the people who are in the photos are the mothers of the people, mothers of victims or family members of victims, some victims themselves who have suffered at the hands of the police, and they were produced. They'd done MSJC had done I think maybe 39 different interviews or maybe something around that, and asked me whether I'd be interested in coming, helping to take the photos. And Coltrane McDowell, who asked me who called me up and I was involved with, I was working with another project. He suggested that we do the black and white, and I said, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Why don't we have some pictures where we hold up the names of the people who'd been killed as a kind of visual of, how to describe it? Yeah, sort of visual prompt or something that, you know, to kind of get the message across. And then I just took a bed sheet I had and my reflector, and I went down to the Social Justice Centre where we'd been before, and one of the activists who I worked with quite a lot, a guy called Stoneface Bomber, he was helping me out, and the mothers and survivors had come there for another meeting, and so we asked them to write the names on pieces of paper if they were comfortable with it, and yeah, I took the photos, and we did it in two different sittings, or they were standing, so 2 different sessions, and yeah, I was really keen to kind of get across the feeling of what it was like for these people. So I suggested to the contributors, the people who were photographing, if when they were standing in front of me, that they would, if they were comfortable with it, that they could reflect on their situation, and I think that's what really helped convey the emotion in the photographs, because I was stunned by the I mean, you know, photography was a collaborative process, but the kind of like depth of collaboration I felt that was going on while we were taking the photographs was something I think that was quite powerful, and I hope that that sort of conveyed in the images. And I think when I came to edit the images and put them together, I was they were going into this book, and I thought, you know, this is actually a very interesting collection, and it would be, it seems to have been something that would help raise awareness to this cause, and that's why I thought it would be a good opportunity to have some kind of exhibition and to raise awareness and kind of be another, as Wangui described, another kind of tool in the sort of arsenal of this social movement.
I was just wondering, how did the people you photographed, how did they respond to your presence as a non-local?
Well, I think that everyone was, you know, we explained what we were doing, and obviously it's a collaborative thing, and I've been around at that stage. I'd been around, I think, for sort of 6 months, not loads, but like, you know, at least you know, quite a few times coming backwards and forwards from Mathare. So I don't think I was a complete stranger. But I think, yeah, some people were maybe a little hesitant, but once we kind of I think, yeah, well, I think the thing is that I think I've explained this to Shensia before, but certainly from my Wangui, you might be able to also say something about this, but the people who are in the photographs are just some of the people, you know, a small section of the people who have suffered at the hands of the police in Kenya, and they're also the people, I think, are largely the people who've come forward are activists, and they're people who have are, you know, taking an incredibly brave, doing an incredibly brave thing by standing up for what they standing up and telling, you know, being represented and just talking about what's happened to them and standing even for a photograph. And there are, as I understand it, hundreds of people, you know, and rising, people who get killed by the police in Mathare, and Mathare is one of I think over 100 informal settlements in Nairobi where there are thousands of people living. You know, half of the population lives in these kind of environments in Nairobi, and they're often out of sight and out of mind of the middle class who go around on very nice roads and live in very nice sort of green compounds. You know, and you know that's not that's the kind of way it is. You know, and I think there are many people who are in this, you know, in a situation who haven't felt able to come forward. And so I think these people who came forward are I think, you know, doing a very brave thing, and are familiar with, you know, by even being involved in the Mothers and Survivors Network, they've taken a really brave step.
Is there any, I see there is Mothers and Survivors Network, but is there any formal or non-formal, you know, organization or anybody that could help on the actual trauma side of being a victim of or survivor of violence? And I guess I'm going a little bit further with this question, is that, like, is anything in place for you, Ed? Like, I bet, is there anything that has been, I think I'm assuming that it's been very difficult for you over an extended time to hear of police brutality, and I'm just assuming that there's been some sort of impact on you as well, or how did you negotiate that? Is there any network there for both you and perhaps the people that came forward that took lots of risks, as well as emotionally I think severely affected?
Well, I'll let Wangui answer the question about the kind of support systems for the survivors. But in terms of me, I think, you know, it's I guess part of the job of anyone who works with these kind of people is you know, or like, you know, difficult stories, or you know, people who work in hospitals, or, you know, as a journalist, I work in lots of different contexts, and yeah, you know, as journalists, and I guess even I was talking to a doctor friend of mine at the weekend, and she was saying that you kind of become quite thick-skinned in terms of your relation, and you can appreciate that these stories are very hard and tough, but that you know, obviously has to, if you you know, you try to realize that the stories are important, but also to and that's the, you know, that's the important reason why you're working on them, but also I guess you I mean, me hearing about the stories is not half as bad as what's happened to the people telling them. So, you know, yeah, for me, I don't see it as a particular issue. You know, my you know, I can go back at the end of the day and go and very easily go back into you know, as I said before, nice place that I live in, Nairobi, and it's, you know, decompressed, but for millions of people in the city, and, you know, all over Kenya and even Africa, that's not an option.
Okay, thank you.
And in terms of trauma, I mean, the part of the work of the survivors, Mothers of Victims and Survivors Network, is also not just to come together, but to grieve together, which offers some form of catharsis, and to access psychosocial support, so that's available. Also to access lawyers, because many of the family members involved don't have money to access lawyers. And part of our work in Mathare Social Justice Centre is to make connections where they can have lawyers. But often many of the cases that we document don't make it to the courts. So for a case against the police to reach the court, it has to be investigated by the Independent Police Oversight Authority. And once they do that, then it's submitted to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. But for IPOA, or the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, to conduct an investigation, then they need the police to give ballistic records. They need the police to comply, but this doesn't happen. And often people are also scared to investigate the police. So many of the cases of the women we have, if we've documented maybe 200 over the years, I would say maybe only one has reached the courts. Granted, some of the difficulty is witnesses, people are afraid to come forward, but this just shows the difficulty in even cases getting to the court. So a lot of what we do is to try and follow up with the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, but above all, offer psychosocial support and also engage in activities that push the political envelope in different ways. For example, the mothers today are in Mathare posting the information that police, when they approach you, they should have uniform and that they should not be in unmarked cars. So they're going to spread that information through posters across the settlement. This is the different work that they do. Or they will grieve with another mother. For example, this Saturday, it's been 40 days since a young man called Marcus was killed this coming Saturday. So his family are going to make a small meal for people to eat together. So they're part of these different processes that are not just coming together, but charting a way to heal together and also to make sure that they get justice. I think one thing I would add also that I'm really grateful for Ed for, there's a lot of poverty pornography done in Africa, a lot of pictures that are taken that don't show people in submissive positions and positions of pain. And what I really appreciate from Ed's effort and Ed's lens is that he took these pictures in ways that showed that really the sentience of the women and the family members. And actually one of the pictures, if you see some of the, for example, there's the most, I think the most widely, the picture that was the basis for our poster, the mother who has maybe she's distinguished by a burn on her hand. She looks enormous, but if you see this woman in real life, she's less than 5 feet. And I think part of the power of Ed's photographs is that he elevated, or he gave such stature to these mothers, to these family members, that when you see them, you're like, God, you're only 4 feet tall, but in this picture, you're so powerful. And he's captured them in ways that doesn't document them as victims, but as women who are, and family members who are demanding justice, and in really complex ways. So I really appreciate that Ed's work in that way.
I do think that this project overall, it's almost like putting photojournalism for action and change, is putting these collaborations with you at the service of, to create an impact, which is not just in words, but in actions. And I think it's wonderful to hear, even if it's a small step towards, something that, it's a big achievement, what ultimately a big goal, but still it's a massive step that been fighting, and at least now people are informed about asking for police to be uniformed and that they would be using a car which is marked. So this is amazing. I think it's already a great step towards, hopefully bigger achievements. Yeah, but still it's a great step. Yeah. Reflecting on the projects and looking at forward for the future, what are your plans? Where do you think the project will lead into? Is there, please tell everybody that listen to this interview, where can they see your work, both of your work, and how they can perhaps be engaging with you and directly ask questions and so forth.
Well, Ed is taking over the world in many different ways. He's everywhere taking pictures. Maybe you can see that, but our work, I mean, you can follow our website. I've given you the website.
Yes. Please do say it as well so that everyone can hear it.
So it's Mathare Social Justice Centre. Website. For those of you in Kenya, come to our space, because really often we are not like, there's so much happening that you don't always get to showcase. So come to our space in Mathare. But we have a website, we have Twitter. And if there's a way to get involved, so just Mathare Social Justice Centre @gmail.com.
Okay, fantastic. And you, Ed?
Yeah, you can absolutely feel free to reach out to me. My website is edram, all one word, .org, and then my Instagram or Twitter is edr4m, and yeah, feel free to get in touch with me on either of those platforms, or yeah, feel free to email as well. It's ed.hc.ram@gmail.com. Yeah, and I'm really hoping that I can continue my work with MSJC, and I've really, when I was in London, I was really keen on learning about sort of yeah, community sort of community collaborations and working and the use of photography like that. So I'm keen to keep going on that level and be working with MSJC and seeing what's next. I really hope I'd love the exhibition and the images to be sort of further publicized in the UK or in Europe, because and I don't think we've touched on this quite yet, but you know, Kenya is a former UK colony, and a lot of the policing tactics and a lot of the political tactics are a legacy of colonial rule, British colonial rule. And Kenya broke free from colonial rule in 1963, but a lot of the divide and rule tactics that the British colonizers used in pitting different ethnicities against each other are still very much alive and well in Kenya today. And so it's very important, I think, now, as the conversation about colonialism is coming more to the fore, I think, in Europe and in the US, that yeah, we try to kind of understand that the things that were done in Africa and other places in the world that have been subject to colonialism are still, you know, in various different forms of complications because of that, and colonialism's impact is felt, not always, but often in negative ways around the world, and Kenya is a very interesting and sad example of that, I think.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
I just add that honestly, we would love the images of these powerful people to travel as much as possible. So if anyone listening can help offer solidarity to make that happen, we would really appreciate it. So yeah, we hope that that can happen.
That's amazing. Yes, definitely. We will definitely also post this on our so in our through our website and social media. So hopefully that will happen. Yeah, thank you to everyone. Actually, it's been a great yeah, it's been a very meaningful conversation we had today. And I hope, yeah, we will continue to somehow this conversation, we can continue it, and maybe, who knows, maybe there will be other developments from it, but for sure, I really, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and share this very important work.
Thank you, Chindia. Thank you, Miriam.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you both. Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you for
Stay in
taking
touch.
the time.
So we will post this through our website and link it to all our channels, so everyone can, yeah, can hear you and hear your project. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.